Welcome to Computing at Home with Digital Schoolhouse. My name is Estelle, otherwise known as ComSci Geek. I'm a computing teacher and also develop resources for the programme. We specialise in delivering computing workshops that are accessible, educational and fun. You are watching part 1 of our Starlink Battle for Atlas workshop. This part of the workshop is unplugged, meaning you don't need any tech to take part, just a device to watch the video. You can watch any of our previously streamed workshops on our YouTube channel. Just search YouTube for Digital Schoolhouse. To all learners watching, remember you can pause the video at any time to take notes, collect your thoughts, or take part in the workshop alongside me. The Digital Schoolhouse team are ready and waiting in the chat should you have any questions throughout, and I'll also be taking 5 minutes to answer your questions at the end of the workshop. Parents and guardians, you might want to watch the next bit as it explains how to access our resources, but after that feel free to join in or sit nearby to supervise if you want to. Let's get started. Okay, so let's have a look at the resources that we're going to need for today. So as usual, there is the option to use our worksheets, but if you don't have access to a printer, then you can always do this on paper using just a notepad or plain paper. That's absolutely fine. Excuse me. So you will need our worksheets, and there are 4 worksheets for today. So you'll need the initial ideas sheet, the game design document, screen planning, and finally, you will need the interactions sheet. So those are the 4 sheets that you're going to need. But as I said, if you don't have access to a printer, that's absolutely fine. Just get yourself a notepad and a pen or pencil, or just some plain paper, and you can join in with those. So I'll just quickly show you where to access those on our website if you need to find out where to do that. So just bear with me a moment while I do that now with you. So what we will do is we'll head over to the website. So as usual, you need to go onto the internet, go to digitalschoolhouse.org.uk. Once you're into the website, go to the resources section, click on live workshops. You'll need to scroll down the page and find Starlink Battle for Atlas. As usual, if you are watching this on YouTube, you might need to scroll further down the page. Click on where it says Starlink Battle for Atlas. And then you will need just the public files, which is the worksheets just down here. And the ones that you're going to need for the first part are pages 2 to 5. So initial ideas, game design document, screen planning and interactions, and the other 2 are for the next part of the workshop, and they're actually optional if you aren't able to join us with a PC or laptop for that particular part of the workshop. Okay, so that's what you're going to be needing to access for today's workshop. Okay, so let's jump into what we're going to be learning about today, and hopefully it will be really good and you'll really enjoy it as well. Okay, so we're going to be doing Starlink Battle for Atlas. This is part 1. There will be a part 2 of this workshop on Friday. In this workshop, you're going to be learning about how games are prototyped on paper. You're going to be learning what the programming construct sequence means. Also, you're going to be learning about selection and iteration. And finally, you're going to be learning about using sequence, selection and iteration within an algorithm. As usual, if any of those words are new to you, I'll be explaining them as we go along, so don't worry if that's something that's new. So first of all, what is Starlink? So if you aren't familiar with Starlink, Starlink is a computer game, and we're going to watch a little trailer to give you a little flavour of what Starlink is about. So bear with me a moment and I'll pop that on for you now.
Could use a little help here. Can you hear me?
Let's rock and roll, boys!
Okay, so there is your sneaky peek at Starlink Battle for Atlas. So it gives you an idea of what the game is if you haven't played it before. So it is a space shooter type game, and the style of game that we're going to actually be creating in the second part of this workshop is a arcade space shooter, a little bit in the style of Space Invaders. So if you haven't actually played that game, it's a retro type game. You might want to do a bit of research and actually have a look at it yourself before the next sessions. That's called Space Invaders, if you do want to find out a little bit more about the style of game that we're going to be creating. So Starlink, it's a video game. It's out now if you wanted to go and get yourself a copy of it, and it is what we're going to be using for the game that we're going to be creating in part 2. So for this workshop, you're going to be given assets to use, and not only has the environment been set to space, but actually the whole of your game sort of plan has been already set aside for you. So the environment is space, the genre is an arcade game, as I just said, a little bit in the style of Space Invaders. The goal is going to be to survive, and the rules are to avoid enemies. And we've also got a set of assets that you are going to be using. So these are just a few of the assets that you have. There are some extra ones, but for now we're just going to focus on these 4. So you've got a picture of the main player, which is this guy here. He is going to be the person introducing the game to your players, and this is Star Fox. We've also got a spaceship that's going to be shooting the asteroids or the meteors out of space, and behind here we have a sort of space scene from one of the alien planets, which we're going to be using for the background of our game. So that's the assets that we've been given to use in this particular workshop, and this is what you're going to be using to create your game in part 2. So what we're going to do next is we're going to fill in our initial ideas. We're going to mind map the initial ideas for our version of Starlink using the assets that have been provided for us. So as I said, we've already got we've already been given a brief for our game, so we know that it's going to be space is the environment, the genre is arcade, the goal is survive, and the rules are avoid enemies. So we can start to fill this sheet in now. So I'm going to pop it on my visualizer just to show you that I've got it here myself. I've got this sheet here, but actually what I'm going to leave on the screen while I quickly fill mine in is those assets, because you're going to need to use them for filling in your sheet. So I'm going to be jumping between the two, showing you the game assets to remind you what you're going to be designing, and then filling it in on my sheet on the visualizer as well. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to be filling in the character in this box here. I'm going to write down what mechanics I think the game's going to have. I'm going to talk about what platform and controller I'm going to be using, and also the theme in here as well. So I can start to fill some of that in just from the information I've got at the top of my sheet. So I'm going to use a pencil, just because if you've been watching my workshops, I sometimes make mistakes, and if I write it in pencil, then I can rub those out. So the mechanics are a little bit like the rules of our game. So the mechanics are going to be avoid enemies. But I might want to put a bit more detail into that. So what exactly do I mean by avoid enemies? So what I mean is avoid being hit by a meteor. Okay. And if I do, what's going to happen? Yeah, I'll die. So if I get hit, or it's game over. But the other part of my mechanics are that I need to shoot the meteors with my laser. So that is the other part of it. The platform that we're going to be designing for part 2 is going to be PC or laptop, which means that we're going to control the game with a keyboard and mouse. Now, if you do want to do this activity and have your game working on a tablet, so an iPad, something like that, that is also possible. It just means a few of your settings will be slightly different. So if your platform is going to be for a tablet, then you could put that in there instead. So feel free to make little changes like that if it's appropriate for your game. The theme, well, we've already told you that the environment is space. So the theme is it's going to be a space shooter. And it's set on a alien planet. There we go. Now my character, I've got Star Fox, and I'm going to attempt to draw a little picture of Star Fox just to remind you what he looks like. There he is, and I'm going to do just his face, a little attempt at that, and I'll show you what I end up with in just a minute. Hopefully, as I've said before, my drawing skills aren't amazing. I'm sure that you'll end up with something that looks a lot better than me. Oh, excuse me, my stomach is rumbling today. I'm obviously ready for my lunch. There we go, and put his eyes in like that. Okay, so let me show you what I've ended up with. There is what I've ended up with. There's my little drawing of Star Fox. And he is going to be the he's going to be like the narrator in our game. So he explains the rules. And how to play. Now, aside from that, our Star Fox, we also have his starship. And that's almost like a second character in this particular game. So we can do an attempt at drawing that as well. So again, I'll show you my PowerPoint, and I'm going to attempt to draw the ship, and I'll show you what I ended up with in a minute, and we can compare to see who ended up with the best drawing. As usual, if you want to spend a bit longer on drawing these designs, feel free to pause the stream, but just be aware that it might skip forward, sorry, when you start again, and then you'll need to just be aware of that and pop it back to where you left off. That's absolutely fine. My drawing's not too good this time, so there's my drawing of the starship. And this is going to be shooting lasers. There we go. So there is my initial ideas for my game, of my version of Starlink, using sort of an arcade space shooter kind of vibe, kind of feel to it. So that's my initial ideas completed. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to fill in the game design document. So this is something that's really important when we're designing games, and actually if you were working in a studio and designing games, this is a really important document that's used throughout the design of the game, so that everyone makes sure that they're following the same information, and so you don't end up with one person in the team designing something very different to somebody else, because that wouldn't be very good, would it? It wouldn't like flow together and fit together. So that's why the game design document exists, and that's why it's so important. Now obviously if this was in industry, it'd be a lot more detailed than the one that we're creating now, but it's a very similar document, and it's going to give us similar feedback that we can use to help us in designing our game. So let's pop the details in. So the name of the game, now this is up to you. So you might want to call it Starlink. You might want to call it Starlink : and then give it a slightly different name. It's completely up to you. You can come up with your own name if you want to, but I'm just going to keep mine to Starlink for my version. The audience of my game. Now, if I look at the actual Starlink game itself, I can see it's got a PEGI rating of 7. Now, if you don't know about PEGI ratings, that's something that you might want to do a bit of research into. They're used for telling people what the content of the game is going to be like, and roughly what age should be appropriate for that game. So Starlink is for players that are 7 and up. And the other thing that you can sometimes see on the back, alongside the PEGI rating, is a little bit of detail of the kind of things that are included in that. And again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail of this. You could do some research and find out what these two symbols actually mean. So who is the audience of my game? And this is about the PEGI rating. So it's going to be PEGI rating 7 to match the original title. And it's going to be for children mainly, aged 7+. And I think this one is going to be for boys and girls. Oops, there we go. So the aim of the game is to stay alive. And remember, we had that on our original document with our brief, which was to survive. So stay alive, avoid the meteors, and shoot them out the sky. There we go. So that's the aim of the game and what it's about. Is there a main character to the game? What does it do? So yes, there is. There is Star Fox. And as we said, he is like a narrator, which means he introduces the game and teaches you how to play. There we go. And how do you win the game or move on to the next level? So you win the game by surviving, or next level by surviving all the meteors in the meteor strike. There we go. How does the game end? So this is really up to you. So we're only going to be designing one level of our game, so you can really go to town on this. It doesn't have to be the same as mine. It's completely up to you. So in my example, it's going to be when all the meteors have been destroyed and the planet is safe. There we go. But you can change that. It's up to you. This is something that we're probably not going to get onto in part 2, and it's something that you could then do yourself and come up with your own multiple levels for the game. So it's up to you how you decide the game is going to end. So the main rules of the game are you have to move the ship to avoid the meteors, and shoot at them with lasers to destroy them. There we go. So there is our game design document filled in. As usual, if you do need to pause it here, that's absolutely fine. Feel free to pop a pause on and come back to me in a minute if you are wanting just to spend a bit more time on filling in that game design document. That's absolutely fine. Feel free to do whatever you feel is best at the moment. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of what we're doing today. Okay, so we're going to be jumping back into the PowerPoint, and we're going to be carrying on with our plans for the game. So bear with me a second. I'm actually going to have to swap what I'm doing and come back into it in a slightly different way to what I would normally do. So apologies if you are going to possibly see things on your screen, which I normally avoid doing, but because something's not working quite as it normally does. Okay, so let me see if I can get this working. Just bear with me 2 seconds. I'm just going to close it and open it again. That's always the best thing to do, I find, if something's not quite working as it should do. Okay, so what I'm going to do is pop the PowerPoint back on. There we go. And we'll carry back on. So, as I was just saying, we are going to have a look at the next part. So we've just done our game design document and we've filled that in quite a lot of detail. What's the next thing that we need to start to plan for our game? So next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to plan the screen planning. So this is where we can start to go to town in thinking about what different parts of our game are going to look like. So here it is on my my sheets. So I've got 4 places that I can design different screens for. And as with the thinking about how the different levels are going to work, as we've discussed with that, this isn't actually going to be included in what we get onto in part 2. We're only going to be able to design just the actual main level design for a single level. So we probably won't be able to do everything that we design on this, but if you want to, this is something that you could expand your game and come up with some ideas now for how you might want to extend it later on. So this might be the screen that comes up as the very first screen when you first load the game, which gives you the instructions and asks you if you want to play the game. So on my version, I think if I go back a couple of steps and we bring up those game assets again, these are the ones that we've got choice to use. I think we'd probably just have the actual text Starlink. Now this might be different for you depending on what you decided you were going to call your game. Whether you're going to keep it just a Starlink or whether you were going to put something slightly different. There we go, and I'm gonna do a button with just a start button. There we go. And as usual, I've got some coloured pencils to colour it in as well. So I'm going to add some colour. There we go. I think as well what I'm going to do is I'm going to make almost like a black background around the back of my design, which I'm just checking if I've got a black pencil. I might not have a black pencil with me today. I don't think I do, so I'm going to have to do it in pencil. That's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some stars, and then the rest of the background is just going to be coloured in black, but I'm going to do it fairly quickly. As usual, if you do need more time, you can pause it and take that time that you need. If you want to see what the actual Starlink logo looks like, and you want to make me want to copy that, then if I put that there on the visualizer, you can copy that too if you want to. So pop in background like that. Now I'm doing a quick job of this because I don't want you to spend ages watching me colouring in, so do spend longer than I am in colouring in to make it look nice. Okay, so there is my screen, and I'm going to do something similar to the Starlink logo. I'm going to grab an orange pencil and I'm going to do that little bit of colour that's in the logo. There's my orange pencil, and it needs sharpening, so I'm just going to quickly do that, and then I will add that bit of orange into the letter A. There we go. Whoops. So I'm going to do something similar to the logo, but I think I might make just make these a little bit 3D by adding a little bit of highlighting to them. There we go. So there is my start screen. So describe it here. This is the start screen, and it's press start to begin game. There we go. So there's my description. Okay, so then here I'm going to have my Star Fox character, which I'm just going to simplify just for getting it done quickly, and quickly show you again those different options for your design. There we go. So I'm going to do my Star Fox character, and he's going to be talking about how to play the game. Again, spend a bit longer than I am, make it look a bit better. And I'm going to have a speech bubble. So to play the game. Now I haven't completely decided on how this is going to work yet, so I'm just going to do that because the instructions would go in there if I had more time. I'm going to do a little bit of colour onto Star Fox as well. So he's that orangey colour because he's a fox. There we go. And I don't think we need to do anything else. We might have a little enter there so we know that you press enter then to start the game. So this is Star Fox telling you how to play, and then press enter to start. Okay, so then we go on to this next one. So let's have another look at what we've got to use. And this is where we're going to do the main design. So as I said at the beginning, this is going to be an arcade style game, and it's going to be like Space Invaders. So that means in my design, I'm going to have my ship down the bottom here, and I'm just going to do a quick sort of ship design. There we go. And actually, there we go. Looks a bit better. Right, okay, and then in the background we've got this strange almost alien landscape which has got like these funny little almost like spires in the background. Okay, and it's all that sort of different colour blue background, so I'm going to add a little bit of colour to the background as well, but this is just going to be almost like a hint at it because I haven't got time to go in a huge amount of detail at the moment. And then I also have the meteors themselves that are just falling out of the sky. So let's pop a couple of those in, and I'm going to colour those in sort of a reddy brown colour. There we go. And those are falling out of the sky. Okay, and also we have our lasers that come out of our spaceship, and they come out of the guns that are there. There we go. I'm just going to add a little bit of colour to the ship as well. There we go. So there we have our starship coloured in. Okay, so let me add a bit of detail about this. So this is going to be a space shooter. So avoid meteors and use lasers to destroy them. Okay, and then the next one's going to be, maybe it's going to be what happens once we've destroyed all of the meteors for that particular level. And I think something just simple that just tells us that we've managed to do it. So I think before we go back to Star Fox again, it's just going to tell us that we've been successful. So draw my Star Fox character again. There we go. And he's just going to say, well done, you've been successful. There we go. And we add a little bit of colour to that as well. So I grab my orange again. I must have put it up. There it is, there it is. Okay. And that would be the end of the game. So the last thing I'm going to do is just pop that little bit of detail into the box at the bottom. And it's Star Fox. Telling you that you've been successful. There we go. Okay, so there is my screen planning for my game. So hopefully you've got something similar. As usual, if you want to pause the stream for a moment and then come back and join me, then that's absolutely fine if you've not quite finished doing your screen planning. But if you're finished and you're ready to go on to the next bit, then that's what we're going to be doing now. As usual though, if you do need a bit more time, that is absolutely fine. Okay. So having finished our screen planning and planned what our game is going to look like, remember you could do something slightly different. You could do an extra sheet and you could go into more detail and think about different levels. You could do a loading screen as well. And there's lots of different types of screens that you could do for this. So think about what you might want to do and you can always put more detail in. We're now going to have a think about what does Starlink have to do with computer science. So this picture is an example of the code that took man to the moon on the Apollo 11 mission. So you can see that programming is a huge part of what astronauts have to work with, and also there are so many people that are involved in any sort of space mission. And I don't know if you've been watching the recent space missions with SpaceX, and it's been really exciting, and all of that has been specially coded and uses some of the languages that we use in other workshops actually. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, you might want to watch some of our other workshops that use Construct 3, because JavaScript is one of the languages that's actually used in SpaceX. So this is an example of code that's called assembly language, and it's being used here to control it's actually being used to control, if I can remember, the turning on and off of different parts of the spaceship. So this is being used for the Apollo 11 mission. So you'll be glad to know that the programming that we're going to be doing in part 2 isn't as complicated as this, but it's a good way of starting to learn about coding, and potentially maybe in the future you might end up working in a space mission, and how exciting would that be? So this, as I said, this bit of code is about using the ignition routines. So it's turning on different parts of the ignition routines for the Apollo 11 mission. Very exciting. Okay, so the last part what we're going to do is plan the interactions sheet. So this is where we are going to focus on this part of our screen planning, and we're going to start to think about what the interactions are going to be like in the game when you're actually playing the game itself. And this is really the programming of the game. This is planning the algorithm for the game itself. So that's what we're going to be working on next. So we're going to hop onto the visualizer again, and we're going to start to fill in this sheet and plan what the interactions are going to be like on the screen. So once again, I'm going to do my quick design of the main screen, which is the sort of space shooter type game. I'm going to do a bit more detail in my meteors this time because I've got a bit of time and I've got a bit more space to work in. So there's my meteors, and I'm going to do my ship at the bottom here, and let's draw that in. I've got a bit more space to work in, so I can do it a little bit bigger. There is my ship, and in the background again we've got this strange alien planet with like the strange sort of spires in the background, and those, remember, are coloured in blue, so I'm going to add a bit of colour to that as well, but just a bit of colour to give a flavour. But as usual, if you want more time to spend on that, you can pause the stream here and then join me a bit later, but it's up to you. Okay, so there is my alien planet. I'm going to colour in my spaceship, my starship, there we go. And I'm also going to just give it an idea of the lasers that it can shoot, like that. And last but not least, we're going to colour in those meteors as well. Okay, so there is the design of my main level of my game I'm going to be creating in part 2 of this workshop. And then I'm going to start to describe the interaction. So what needs to happen and what action happens as a result of this. So this is an example of selection. So we talked at the very beginning that we're going to talk about selection, sequence and iteration. So this is selection because it's an if statement. If this happens, do this. So when the meteor collides with the ship blows up. Okay, so there is our if and there is our action. So when the meteor collides with the ship, the ship blows up. So if you need a bit more time to think about this, then do spend a bit more time. So the next one I want you to think about is what would happen if the laser hits the meteor. So when the laser hits a meteor, what happens? I'll give you a chance to have a think about it. What do you think the action's going to be? If one of these lasers hits one of these, what happens? Very good. The meteor blows up. Okay. So the next thing, so that would be repeated. So this is where we can start to think about iteration. So when we're planning the sheet for now, we really only need to worry about the selection statements, the if statements. If this happens, do this. But later on, we'll also be thinking about the loops and the iteration in the program. But this is one of the things that's going to need to repeat. So the whole program, all the time, all of these things need to repeat. So we can put that in a repeat. So this needs to repeat for the whole game. Both of those need to repeat for the whole game. Okay, so that's really important, that whenever a laser hits a meteor, it will blow up the meteor, and whenever in the game, if a meteor collides with a ship, the ship's going to blow up. So what happens if the ship's blown up? So when the ship is blown up, what needs to happen? Yeah, it needs to be game over. So it might go to a game over screen, it might have the text that popped up on the screen, it's completely up to you. Oops, I missed an E out on the end of game, there we go. And then what happens if all the meteors are destroyed? So if all the meteors are destroyed, what's going to happen? Yay! So you're going to get that success screen. There we go. And that's what's going to happen there. Now, both of these also need to happen throughout the whole game. So if at any point the ship is blown up, then the game over comes up. If at any point the meteors are all destroyed, then you get that success screen. Okay, you might want to have a think about if there's any other interactions that you might want to do. In fact, there are 4 more that we do need to consider. Just give you a moment to think about what those might be. What other things do we need to include in this? Have you worked it out? Yeah, the arrow keys. So if we press the left arrow, the ship needs to move to the left. Very good. Ship moves left. If we press the right arrow, the ship will move to the right. Very good. Okay, now I'm not going to do an up and down arrow as well, because I'm going to keep this quite simple, and it's going to be in the style of a arcade space shooter where you can just move left and right. If you want to do the up and down arrows of these 2 last rows, then it's up to you. Okay, you can pop those in as well. You might also think of some other interactions that might be included in your game if you want to maybe do slight adaptation to the one that I've done. So feel free to fill in these last 2 rows with something slightly different if you want to. That's completely up to you. Okay, so we've now completed our interaction sheet and planned what our game is going to look like on the screen, and also thought about the programming of it. So we talked about iteration. We talked about how all of these instructions need to happen throughout the program and be tested for throughout the program. So that's what iteration means. It means repeating, continually doing that thing. And we've also talked about how we need to have some selection going on, because we want to say, if this happens, do this. Now the other one that we didn't discuss was sequence. And that just means that the instructions happen in the order that they're written. So for example, on the very first screen where you press the start button and then it takes you to starting the game, that's an example of something that's happening in sequence. You press the button and then you go into the game. It doesn't go into the game and then expect you to press the button. It happens in the order that it is written in. So that is sequence, selection and iteration, which are all constructs that you use for designing something when you're programming. Okay, so very quick recap over what we've done so far. So a construct is a fancy way of describing the different types of programming that we're going to be using. Sequence is the name given to instructions that are run in the order they are written. So for example, you press the button and it takes you to the next screen. Selection is the name given to sets of instructions that are run as a result of a condition. So like in our example here, where we said the meteor collides with the ship, so the ship blows up, so that's selection. The last one is iteration. So iteration is the name given to sets of instructions that are repeated a set number of times or until a condition is met. So in this example, all of our different things that we've got in our plan for our program, the plan for the interactions in our program, they are all repeated until the game is completed. So that's what the condition is in this particular example. Okay, so finally, let's look at those all together, because we can actually use those constructs together in the same code. So that's really, really helpful. So you can use these in conjunction with each other. You can even actually use them nested inside each other, which is really, really helpful when you're writing a program. So that is what we use these different constructs for, and we'll look at more detail about those next time when we start to design this actually as a game. So we've done all those, so I'm just going to jump back through. So next time we are going to be focusing on actually designing our game, so and building it in Scratch. If you don't have access to a computer, you have the option of having a go at designing some key art for your game. So you could come up with an app store icon, a game box, or online store landing pages to design for your version of Starlink, or even you can come up with more levels and actually fill in interaction sheets for multiple levels. That's also something you could do. And finally, the other thing that you could do is come up with different levels for your game, and also think about what different game elements might be involved and how those elements might progress through the different levels of your game. So if you haven't got access to a PC or a laptop or a tablet computer like an iPad or something like that, then those are a couple of options of what you could do with me next time if you wanted to still join in but you don't have the option of having that bit of technology to actually create the game. So you could do some key art, do different level progressions, or even design some more interaction sheets for those different levels that you've come up with. Okay, so in this workshop you've learnt about how games are prototyped on paper, what is meant by the programming construct sequence, what is meant by the programming construct selection, what is meant by the programming construct iteration, and you've then used sequence, selection and iteration within an algorithm, and you did that on your interactions sheet. If you'd forgotten, that was this one here. So we've done all of those things in today's session, so very, very well done. So as usual, I am going to hop over onto the chat for you to ask any questions that you might have. So I will, as just to give you a bit of time, because I think there's a bit of a delay between what I'm doing and what you're seeing on the screen at the moment. I'll give you a little bit of time to pop in any questions that you might have. And if you do have any questions for me, do feel free to pop them in the chat window now. I'm going to just pop a little message in here so that you can be ready to pop those questions in. If you have any questions, please pop them in now. Okay, and then just while I'm waiting to see if you've got any questions for me, what I'll do is I'll do a quick sneaky peek of what we're going to be doing next time. So if you're with me for next time, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating our own version of Starlink using Scratch 3, which is all designed in browser, and so you don't need to download anything special to do this workshop. But what you do need to have is the resources, the assets that you're going to be using, and I'm going to very quickly show you where they are so that you can access them for next time. So if you are going to be joining me next time for designing your version of Starlink in Scratch, you will need to access the resources which are on our website, and I showed you our website at the very beginning, but I'll quickly remind you where it is and what you need to search for in case you didn't catch that very first section. So it is digitalschoolhouse.org.uk. Go to the resources section, go to live workshops, find the Starlink Battle for Atlas link, and you need to click on the very first link that says Starlink Battle for Atlas. You will need to go into the Access All Files Here link, and the files that you're going to need while I wait for the Google Drive to load are going to be the files that you're going to need are, just wait for it to load, Starlink resources just there. So click on the Starlink resources and you'll find there are all the different assets that we're going to be using in our game. We've got the armed version of the ship, the explosion, the meteor, some music. We're actually going to add a background bit of music to our game, the ship itself, the Sonatus alien world, Star Fox himself, and also there's another option there for a different background if you wanted to create a second level as well. So those are the Starlink resources that you'll need to access if you are going to join me in Scratch next time. So very quickly, just a quick recap of where you'll find that. So that is on our website, digitalschoolhouse.org.uk, resources, go to live workshops, scroll down, find Starlink Battle for Atlas, whoops, just gone past it, click on the link. You need to go into where it says Access All Files Here, and it will open up the Google Drive, and you need to go to where it says Starlink resources, and you need to download all of those resources ready for next time, because that's what we're going to be using for creating our game in Scratch. Okay, so I've got no questions in the chat room, so thank you for taking part. I hope you've had fun and learned something new. If you've enjoyed this workshop, check out our YouTube channel for more follow-along activities. If you've got any questions or feedback for me, please email dsh@ukie.org.uk. Now, we'd love to see you learning computing at home with Digital Schoolhouse. Parents and guardians, please feel free to share any images or videos using the hashtag computingathome, and you can do that on Twitter or on Facebook. Also, for those of you who love writing, Digital Schoolhouse have launched a creative writing competition, which you can find more information about on our website. If you're the parent of a primary age pupil and you're interested in finding out about how our programme can work with your school, you can find out more about our programme on our website, digitalschoolhouse.org.uk. You can find our contact information in the section below or at the end of this video. Lastly, I wanted to say a huge well done for taking part today. I'm Estelle and I look forward to seeing you next time.